Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Twin Flicks, a film channel for film lovers like yourself. Today we have a special video. Actor Jeff Berg is joining us, and we're going to be interviewing him. He's an actor in film, TV, and video games as Mocap, which is motion capture acting. And we're going to discuss a little bit about that and his journey into the field and his transition from film, TV, into video games. So first, I want to say thank you for joining us today, Jeff.
Hey, it's my absolute pleasure. Great to be here. And hello to all the film and video game fans out there.
Yeah, we have a lot of viewers out there that have a good mix of both. They love film and they love games.
The two worlds are joining together now, so it's pretty exciting time to be a lover of those genres.
All right, well, before we get into the majority of the interview, I got to start off. I heard you did this awesome commercial for Ford. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
It was so awesome. I got to play this badass villain, which is right up my alley. And I did the English ones and the Spanish ones. I didn't have to speak any Spanish, but they cut it into two different markets. And basically they shot it like a film. And it was so badass. It had helicopter shots. We had like car chases and there's this whole team of Ford people that were trying to take me down, this awful villain, and my name was Gridlock. And yeah, so they cut it into 9 different spots, and then the director put it into a 12-minute movie. So it's so awesome. The footage is great. I think if you check out my reel on YouTube, I have a couple scenes from it that you would recognize, coming out of the helicopter and stuff like that. So yeah, it was pretty badass.
So they filmed it just like a movie.
Oh, it was so cinematic, like crazy crane shots, like shots along, like driving. This one freaky shot. We were in the LA Dam, and I'm just standing there, like completely by myself, and 6 Fords just came like barreling towards me, and all slammed on the brakes at the same time. And the way it was shot, it looked like it was really close to me, but they stopped a safe distance away. But when I saw the playback, it looked like they were just about to crush me.
You hail from Canada, correct?
Yeah, I'm from a small town called Roseville, which if most of the time I just say Toronto because no one has any idea what Roseville is. But it's close to Kitchener-Waterloo, which is the home of BlackBerry. That was our claim to fame. They created it. Small town of 400 people. I pretty much know everybody. The fact that I'm an actor is pretty funny, actually. It's like never imagined that this lifestyle was an option or even a possibility. You know, when I was booking, I booked my first movie back in, what was it, 98, and it was crazy. I thought it was a hobby, and you know, I was memorizing. All I knew about acting was memorizing lines and just spitting them out, and you know, I connected, you know, being specific, and this is like when my mom said this to me, or you know, so I started to make it personal without any real training, but it really didn't seem like anything more than a hobby. And then I booked another movie and some TV. I'm like, I can play with my imagination and make money, and this is amazing. So I had to pursue it. I'm like, I finished my business degree, and I was like, screw this. I'm not going to law school. Like, that was the plan. I'm going to New York City to go to theater school. And I just like packed up. My dad loaded up the car, and we drove to New York.
And you're going to be the next Harrison Ford.
See how handsome he is? He's like in his 70s, and he's still looking amazing. I'm like, yes.
I'm still amazed he's planning on doing the next Indiana Jones at 76 years old.
How exciting is that? And I just hope they make that movie, bring it back to like The Last Crusade, and like I just want that like pure Indiana Jones beauty back, and not like the newer ones.
Yeah, the last one was it was just embarrassing.
As soon as the gopher popped up in the opening sequence and like turned his head both ways when the car went by, I was just thinking, this is not going well.
Yeah. When did you first get the acting bug? I mean, is it something that you've always wanted to do, or did you see a play or a movie and you thought?
I remember, I think I was about 8 years old, and I was in Orlando at Disneyland, and I got picked to go up on stage for this show, and it was all improv, and got to play along with the actors. And I remember that rush of being up on stage and just seeing the instant gratification from people that were watching. And it was such a rush for me. And then all the people talking to me on the shuttle bus afterwards, I'm like, wow, this is like a drug. Like, it was incredible. And then throughout school, I started, when everyone else was doing projects on like bulletin boards or whatever, I would make short little movies and create characters, and you know, back then I was shooting on a big RCA camera, and I would edit while I would do live editing basically.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, so that was very interesting. But yeah, it kind of grew from there. I loved telling stories and entertaining people. But I never really thought of it as a career choice. And yeah, it kind of just blossomed from there. Like I did a play, did a Shakespeare play back when I was 13, and it just kept like booking, you know, little jobs here and there, and it seemed like a hobby. And then I just decided to take the leap.
So you moved from Canada to New York.
Yeah.
And so how long did it take for you to actually start getting auditions?
Wow. Okay, so I was getting auditions in Toronto before I went to theater school, but I decided to take 2 years and just completely engross myself in everything about film, theater, television, the history of acting. I wanted to read every book. I wanted to learn every technique, learn about, you know, read every actor biography, and just totally just fill my brain with, and like down to a cellular level of everything about being an actor until I went back out into the world again. You know, some people in school, they were auditioning and missing class, and I just decided, I'm like, and also I didn't have, you know, visa paperwork in order to audition. I was allowed to go to school, but I couldn't audition, so it kind of made it easier. But once I graduated, thankfully, the school I went to is called Circle in the Square. It's a theater on Broadway, like 50th and Broadway in New York, and the school is literally in the basement below the Broadway stage. So the whole time, it's such a metaphor when you're in class, just thinking about climbing out of the basement to get up to the stage, you know, to be on Broadway. That was kind of the goal. So thankfully, they helped provide a showcase at the end. So we got to everyone got cast in a play, and then also there was a scene night where we worked 2-minute scenes, and we got agents, casting directors, managers, anyone that was willing to show up that was in the industry. We invited them, you know, did like a wine and cheese party, and we went up it was actually on the Broadway stage, which was so cool. And from then I was very fortunate. I ended up getting an agent that I worked with right up until I moved to Los Angeles. And, you know, they started submitting me right away, and it was pretty quick. Like, once I had my headshots taken and you know, started to get my demo reel put together, like, these are necessities. Once you have that stuff set in place, I started to get out an audition fairly quickly. You know, booking took a while. It's tough. It's a life of rejection, and you know, to put a sports metaphor to it, like if you're playing baseball and you're batting 300, that's like, you know, Hall of Fame status. In acting, if you're batting like 100, you know, 1 out of 10, you're kind of on fire. So it's tough. You got to have pretty thick skin and not to take it personally, because there's so many factors that are out of our control.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I spoke to other actors, and I've worked someone in the business, and the very first thing I was told by everybody is, if you don't have a thick skin, then you don't belong in this business. Yeah,
and you know, I don't know if I had a super thick skin to begin, but it definitely developed over the years. And I think the thick skin also comes from, you know, your reasons why one wants to be an actor. Like, the people that I just think it's going to be, I want to do it for the money. Like, they see all the celebrities with all their fancy cars and red carpets and money, and they want to be famous. Those two things, people start to learn very quickly that that's just an illusion created by the media, and it looks pretty glamorous sometimes. And then you have your first 18-hour night shoot, and it's raining, and it's absolutely freezing, and they just can't get the take, and you have to do 20 takes of something. It's like, oh, it wasn't the glamour that I was thinking about, And sometimes you do a film and it doesn't come out for years. Like, I did a movie 5 years ago that I'm proud of, but it still hasn't come out, So you have to do it for the love, and that's where the thick skin comes from, when you realize that it's not personal. There's going to be people that are better looking, there's going to be people that are taller, there's going to be people that have more talent, different talent, but what each actor brings to the table is their uniqueness, and no one else can be that person. So there are roles for everybody, which is exciting. And if you don't get something, it just means that maybe they need someone else. Like, I have had auditions where I knew I was awesome. I rocked it. I walked out, they were just clapping and laughing, and then you see it on television, and the guy's way taller than me, or way shorter, or just a totally different type, and you realize, it doesn't matter how good I was, they weren't looking for me, and that's okay, and then you just move on.
So I was on YouTube, and I saw some of your demo reels, audition reels. So would you say YouTube is a good way for someone who's starting out to get their foot in the door or get noticed is by going through the YouTube route?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, YouTube wasn't available, so having that distribution channel, which is what it is incredible. I mean, I wouldn't recommend what I have. I'd put up some auditions in the past, and that's a no-no. I got in trouble for putting some auditions that weren't private, and then there were spoilers in the audition, and people were all mad at me. They're like, "Why did you post that? Now I know what happens." And I'm like, okay. And a lot of casting directors, actually most of them now, will say if you put it on YouTube, it has to be a private link, and just share with them, with a password. So, but aside from that, what I really admire about younger kids these days that are just putting their stuff out there. It's it doesn't have to be Oscar caliber performances. It just has to be if you want to be an actor, you have to act. And so, writing stuff, working on it, shooting it, and being vulnerable and putting it out there. And some people are going to hate it, and some people are going to love it. It might be funny, it might suck, but you know what? Dare to suck and go for it, because the worst thing that can happen is that you're sitting at home talking about making stuff and not making anything, and other people are getting out there and making stuff, and people get noticed. It happens. Issa Rae, she made Diary of an Awkward Black Girl, and now she's in season 3 of Insecure. I mean, it's pretty awesome to have this distribution channel available to us.
I was surprised to find out that I didn't know that she started with YouTube.
Yeah,
and now she's got a deal with HBO with this show Insecure. It's just awesome how that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's a way of talented people getting out there and being seen by the masses, and once it hits that tipping point and people start sharing it and they can see how funny it is and how they connect with it, it's it's definitely a possibility. The Mona Lisa was not Da Vinci's only painting. It's not like that was the one. So actors have to take that model and, work on monologues, work on web series, work on student films.
Yeah, and I've talked to some casting directors in the past, and they've always said that what they look for the most is, number one, if you're genuine, and number two, if you're comfortable in front of the camera.
Yeah.
Those are the two main things that they look at first.
You said about being comfortable in front of the camera. It's such a weird setup. I mean, you're stepping into somebody else's shoes, acting truthfully in imaginary circumstances, and then there's a camera in your face that you have to act as if it's not there. it's weird. It's really weird, and it's definitely not for everybody. It's a skill.
So, your first professional gig, did you start out on TV before film?
Yeah, I think I did an episode. My first one, the very first one, was a Canadian TV show on this network called YTV, which is kind of like a Nickelodeon type network, and the show was called System Crash. That was my first little TV gig, and then my first movie. Actually, I just posted it on Instagram recently. A picture from then. It was this movie called The Stalking of Laurie Show, which I guess the title got changed to Rivals. But yeah, that was my first movie, and it was such an amazing experience, learning about like working on a character over a month, and just being on set every day and working as an actor, and I was like, this is the life that I want.
Out of all the roles you've played, which would you say is your favorite, the one role that you would want to play again and again, either on TV, film, or video game?
I think Clyde Blackburn in Battlefield 1.
You can't do this to me! I beat you! I beat you!
My name's Clyde Blackburn. I'm a pilot and a gambler.
I'm George Rackham! I'm George bloody Rackham! Listen to me! You bastard! Keep off my aeroplane!
If you asked me to name my biggest fault, I'd have to tell you, I'm just not a very honest person.
Oh my God, I love diving into his shoes. I would love it if we could make that into a full-length movie. I just love the fact that he's ends up becoming heroic, but is not the greatest guy, and you don't know if I'm telling the truth, but I did help save Wilson, and the viewer is torn whether do I like him, do I not, is he telling the truth? I love that, because I don't think that any quote unquote villain or bad guy can be absolute evil. Unless you're talking Macbeth, who arguably is absolute evil. I feel like bad guys do what they do out of their need to survive, or for love, or their whole life mission becomes getting back, and that's why they do these bad things. And so that's what I love about Clyde, is that he's kind of anti-hero. He's a pilot and a gambler, and we don't really know if he's even telling the truth. So it was just learning about him, and coming up. One of the things that I really love is the stuff that you guys don't get to see, the story that I have to create in order to get to the place where the game begins. Because it's not just like his life began in that moment. There's a whole lifetime of events that have shaped this person to why they're doing what they're doing today. And
is that something that you create?
Yeah,
a whole backstory for your own character, or is that?
I sat a lot for a long time with the director Tom Keegan, who I love. He's my man. We worked on Mirror's Edge Catalyst together, Battlefield, Wolfenstein 2. He's the best video game director, hands down. So I would sit with him, and we would just talk about what was it like in my small Midwestern town where I grew up. What was the relationship with my parents? How did my dad treat me? What was it like with my siblings? And why did I want to go to the war? And what was it like when I got over there? And why did I become a pilot? And just coming up with, I can just let my imagination go. It's only to inform me. No one else is going to know and judge whether it's right or wrong. And it's also good. I got a chance to talk to the writers and to a lot of the production team at DICE and Electronic Arts, and they're so helpful, and they just love the fact that I was willing to ask these questions. They're like, oh my God, so when I was writing this is what I thought, and so, and then I would just get more ideas, and what I do is I just start writing. I write it down, kind of just journal it, and create the world of Clyde, so that when I show up on set on the day, it's that is just bubbling inside of me.
I know my personal experience as a filmmaker, whenever an actor comes to me and wants to know more and more about the character, and wants to actually get really involved in the character and the plot, it brings a lot more depth to that character, because he knows why that person is doing what they're doing and their whole backstory of what led them to that to this moment.
Yeah, and that's, you know, anybody can memorize lines. Like, anyone. You write it down, you repeat it, and you can spit it out. Like, that's, a lot of people think that that's what acting is, but it's not. It's like the words on the page are the magic that the writer put down, but it's the actor's duty to fill in the blanks on the page. That's where like the little diamonds happen. That's why when you see a performance and you're like, oh my God, this is so three-dimensional and alive. It's like, because that kind of stuff has been hashed out. It's not just repeating words that are written down. It's completely to like cellular level getting into the shoes of this character, and that's exciting. That's why I love what I do.
Exactly. It's like, I mean, we've all seen an actor here and there where you're like, it's like he's not acting, he's just reading lines.
Mm-hmm.
And it just does not work. Or a true actor really gets involved with their character.
Yeah.
And talking about Battlefield, let's transition from that into your video game work.
Yeah.
So how did you transition from TV and film into mocap acting?
Paul, I didn't even know it happened when it happened. So I had this audition, and it was weird. It was on a Saturday, and which is kind of rare. It was later in the afternoon, and I showed up at this casting office. So I go into the audition, and the casting director, who has now become one of my favorites, she's like, hey, just feel free to move around a bit if you want. So I'm doing the scenes, and she kept redirecting, and I could see that she saw something in me, and finished it, left, and went on my way. And then finally I get a screen test with Tom Keegan, and we're in this bigger space, and it's like a huge area, and he's working with me, like we're running around, we're like working the scenes, trying like all these different cool ideas. And he's like, so just so you know, this is a video game, and we need you to be like freedom with your body, but also we want the performances to be truthful and grounded. And I'm like, whoa, this is a video game? This is insane. So I ended up booking it, and I show up. I have no clue, Paul, whatsoever when I get there. I'm like, they start to put us in these skin-tight suits and then put the balls on all over on my joints. And then these funny dots on my face, and I had a big beard leading up to it. I had to shave right down, so I felt completely naked. And then they put this head camera on, which at this point they were pretty heavy and had like a fairly big camera. And I was thrown into the fire learning about motion capture. And I tell you, at first it's so strange. I mean, you know, when you talk to another human being, there's nothing in the way of the two of you. But when you're doing motion capture, you literally have a camera, two cameras, because one for each of you, between the two of you, with a super bright light flashing on your face. So you have to deal with all these crazy elements that aren't real, they're not really there, and they won't show up in the final product, but they're necessary so that they can capture all your facial movements. So at the time, it seemed like a pain in the ass, but wow, like, just seeing the results, it's so cool. So that experience was my first one.
That's just insane. You went into this audition, they're telling you, move here, move there, and you had no idea. You're like, what are you doing to me?
Yeah, because, you know, the gaming world is super secretive. Like, normally a film, you'll know what you're working on. And until the most recent SAG contract, where now gaming companies have to tell our agents when they're negotiating, like what the franchise is or what the game is. Back at this point, it was code named, and I had no clue what it was.
You were in Battlefront 2.
Yeah.
Commander Versio. You must be important. So let's talk facts. That's what I'm here for. You have the activation code. I've got the ability to help you out. You know we can really use someone like you.
Tom Keegan called me up and he said, look, I have a project for you, but I don't have any lead roles, I wonder if you would like to be involved. And he was like, you know, you're pretty much going to play stormtroopers. Without telling you what it is, you're going to play stormtroopers and rebel soldiers. I'm like, okay, I have no idea what a stormtrooper world would be in, but
what's a stormtrooper?
Yeah, so I was pretty pumped, and it ended up being like 2 or 3 weeks worth of work. I'm like, yeah, to be in a Star Wars game and work for 3 weeks. And then I showed up, and Tom had worked in a couple of awesome scenes for me, and it turned out the opening scene of the game was one of my scenes, and I got to work with the incredible Janina Gavankar, who absolutely crushes it as I did. And just working with her was so awesome. She's just so giving and funny and a total Star Wars nerd herself. So that was just a dream job.
Yeah. I've played that game, and I've always loved that opening scene.
I mean, you might as well quit the game right after that opening scene, right? Like, it's pretty much all you need to see.
Yeah, no point going further. I know that a lot of people, games are getting so huge now, and even some like A-list stars have started getting into the games more and more. Is there somebody that you've worked with that's A-list star?
Janina Gavankar. So she was from The League and Sleepy Hollow and True Blood. Yeah, so she's awesome. Deborah Wilson I did work with. She was pretty famous for Mad TV. She's a trip. She's so much fun. She's hilarious, talented, and just like super charismatic. Actually, I ran into her to play recently, and she was just like, she put her hand on my heart, and she just gave me a big hug. So she's wonderful.
Let's see here. Let's go into some viewer questions.
Yeah.
Start with Rachel, the film nerd from the UK.
What's up, Rachel?
She writes here, what do you see is the biggest differences between film and video games? From people I've talked to, I hear a lot different. More man hours, more involved as an actor, or is it basically shot like a movie?
All right, Rachel, good question. So what I like to tell people about shooting motion capture, it's kind of like shooting theater on film. And what's exciting about that for an actor is that we have 360 degrees of cameras around us, so we have the freedom to make organic choices that make sense for our character, and then the cinematographers can go back in after and cut away to different cameras. So what I've found is that it's actually a lot faster shooting a game because there's no lighting setups. When you're doing a film, normally the lighting setups tend to take a long time, and then there has to be adjustments for camera and move some flags and so that's
not as much.
Yeah, there's none of that
downtime.
No, not as much downtime. It takes a long time to get ready. So with Tom, we'll show up at 7:30 for breakfast. 8 o'clock we start to get into the suits, markers on the face, and then we have to ROM in, which we do all these body movements. So that takes probably 2 hours to do all of that stuff, and then we, thankfully, in my experiences, we've had rehearsal days, so by the time we go to shoot, everything's ready to go. So in my experience, the actual shooting has been a lot faster. Yeah.
Dylan Brown from Australia, he writes, how do you find the difference in acting to a film or TV set compared to mocap acting to basic shape props like squares or golf balls on a pole?
The props, people tend to, they'll take, they want it to be a collaboration. So, on Star Wars Battlefront, we had guns that had, the mocap balls on them, so that we were it really looked like we were holding something. And we had a special forces ranger come in and give us army training, so that we looked like we were actually holding the real weapon and not like a bunch of actors holding guns. You didn't want to see me hold a gun before.
Well, that's what they used to do back in the day when they were first starting this. It's like they wanted you to imagine you were holding something when you really weren't holding anything.
Yeah.
Now it's completely changed where they actually give you props.
Yeah, it's cool. Like they'll give us, if we're using a touch screen, they'll give us like a clipboard with motion capture balls on it, and it, you know, we can use it as kind of like an iPad kind of setup. So I did a game that I can't say what it is yet, but I just had bunch of small rolls, and we had to wear backpacks, and they gave us actual backpacks rather than just pretending that we were walking with nothing. Like it's getting to the point where with their technology they can pick up all these objects, and it's really cool. Really helps an actor.
And our last question is from Aaron Kilburn from Lake Tahoe. When you shot your scenes for Battlefront, did you go to Skywalker Ranch? I'm assuming no.
Mentally, I was at Skywalker Ranch. You know, I was just putting myself there, and you know,
and George Lucas became best friends.
Oh, George, I call him G. What up, G? You know. Yeah, we shot Battlefront was shot down in El Segundo in South Bay, just outside of Los Angeles. No Skywalker Ranch, but every day felt like we were in some magical Star Wars land, so it was pretty cool.
I want to thank everybody for their questions.
Thanks, guys. You didn't test me too hard.
I remember last time we talked, I think you mentioned something about you are starting Mocap acting boot camp.
Yeah, yeah. So Tom Keegan and I, we had this idea. You know, both of us have people come up and they're like, "Yeah, I want to get in working in motion capture, and how do I get into games?" So what we decided was to do a weekend workshop intensive, where, you know, we're thinking of calling it's Acting for the Digital Age, Mocap, and it's going to be a little bit different than a normal motion capture workshop. So it's about the acting in the digital medium. So it's going to be heavily focused on being truthful in imaginary circumstances, but while wearing motion capture gear. They're going to audition for a scene that they get in advance. They get to work it with Tom. They get to get into the motion capture suits, the helmets, get the dots on the face. A stunt guy is going to show them like how to carry a gun and how to do some falls with all the gear on. We're going to meet some great actors. So I can't tell you who's coming, but I'm going to have a bunch of big video game people doing Q&As. And then on the last day we'll shoot the scenes, and we'll shoot it so that each actor can take home their footage, and also work in front of casting director. So that's going to be coming up hopefully in the next month or two.
Yeah, that's not. So are you building a website or?
Yeah, I mean I'll have a website. We'll do a Facebook page and all that kind of fun stuff.
Is there any future roles you have lined up that you can tell us about?
Mocap wise. Or video game wise, I've got 2 games that I've been a part of, but the NDAs I can't say. I do have an episode of NCIS that just came out. Really cool guest star where I play a murder site cleaner, and I end up getting into the wrong hands and trying to clean up a real murder, like get rid of the evidence, and I get caught. So yeah, look for that one. It should be streaming now, like on Hulu or something. It was on CBS a couple months ago.
Okay.
But the episode's called Friends in High Places, episode 14 of this season. Yeah, and then I'm working on I'm producing an anthology called Two Dudes, and it's based on 2 guys that meet up in a bar, and they bitch about their life as 30-somethings, and one guy's scared of moving in with his girlfriend, the potential of marriage and kids, and the other guy's never connected with anyone in his life, and they're dealing with going on their own paths. And they have these really fun fantasy sequences and cool stuff. And then there's a second half where it's 2 chicks in a bar, and the girls are not talking about relationships, and the one is thinking about quitting her job and becoming a full-time children's book writer. And so both of them are super funny, but then round out the seasons with some really touching moments. So we're just in pre-production for that. We're hoping to shoot that in about a month or so.
Cool. Is that going to be on YouTube or?
I'm not sure. We're in talks with a bunch of kind of streaming services, like what you'd spoken about before about putting stuff on YouTube. What's cool is that there are so many avenues now. Like, you know, Facebook has content. DirecTV's looking for content. YouTube wants content. I mean, there's all these vast amounts of streaming services that want digital content.
Your work ethic is inspiring because
thanks, man.
You're not just an actor that sits there waiting for the next job, waiting for the next call for audition.
It would drive me insane. Like I could just sit and look at the ceiling and wonder why. I left my family and my country and all my friends, and I left that all behind because I wanted to pursue this career. And if I just sit around and wait for it to happen, I'm like, I might as well go home and work in an office because it's not for me. This is a career. You got to be hungry. There's younger people coming up. There's better looking. There's more talented, and you got in order to you're only as good as your last project, and you got to just keep on keeping on. And it's nice when my phone rings from my agent. It's a beautiful thing, and I love hearing from them. But if I just relied on them, they get 10%, I got to put in the other 90. That's what I constantly remind myself. And so Two Dudes may suck. I mean, I think it's funny, and we have a great crew attached, but like maybe nothing comes of it, and then we make something else. We have so many scripts and so many films, and I'm starting to develop like a really tight-knit crew of awesome actors and writers and producers, and I think it's essential just to keep on making stuff. But like I said, I wasn't always like that, and I learned my lesson because I look back and I realized, oh damn, I wasted a lot of that time just waiting for stuff to happen. And it's you have to take your life into your own hands.
Well, let's finish up with one last question here. Any advice for listeners out there who want to get into acting, mocap acting, how to get their foot in the door? Yeah.
So, I mean, really, if you want to be an actor, just really look at yourself in the mirror and say, why do I want this? What do I want? And if it's money and fame, like we talked about earlier, it might be fun for a little bit, but it's a long, hard haul. And if that's what you're looking for, I don't know, man. Chances are it's not going to happen. But if you're in it because you love to tell stories and you love to be creative and you love to use your imagination and you love to affect people and make people think and to play and if it's like, oh, I want a job where I get to play make-believe and dress up like I used to do when I was a kid, then hell yeah, go for it. But then you got to realize that you never get it as an actor. Like you're always constantly learning. Like every performance you could have done you can do better. But then you just have to realize that you're always learning. So I guess for someone who passes that test, once you realize you're in it for life and this is what you want, I say just try and absorb every possible piece of film, theater, television, literature. So read every acting book you can get your hands on. Stanislavski, Meisner, Stella Adler. Read all of those classic teachers. It's essential, and it's good to learn about all the different ways of like methods of acting, because I see it as kind of like a tradesman that shows up to a job with a tool belt. You don't use all the tools on every job, but it's nice to know that you know how to use all the tools, and when you see a situation, you're like, oh, I can pull this one out.
Talking about that, reading Shakespeare and these authors, goes back to what you were saying. Don't just read the words, but put yourself in that character and where that character is coming from.
Yeah.
And they really hone their skills a lot better that way.
And isn't it funny how when someone reads Shakespeare like that, and you understand it, you're like, oh, now that makes sense. Absorb every element of the industry that you can, and then get into a class. I mean, the only way to be an actor is to act, and so get into a class and start making mistakes and learning how to listen and react, and not just worrying about what I'm going to say. Because a lot of young actors, I memorized everything, and they're just waiting to say their own lines. So you want to work with other people and respond to what they're saying, as opposed to just spitting out your next line.
Well, we're running out of time here, so we'll go ahead and end the interview there. So I want to thank you Thanks, Jeff, for taking time out of your schedule.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, guys, so follow Jeff Berg on his Instagram account. I'll have the link below. We'll definitely keep in touch with you and talk.
All right, Paul. It's been a pleasure, man. It's a lot of fun.
We'll talk to you later. Bye.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.